Sports have been fascinating, entertaining, and uniting the masses since all the way back in ancient times. And today, more than ever, they've become one of the most lucrative industries in the world. While we all know that the ones making the most money out of sports are gambling sites and big brands like Nike and Adidas, top athletes themselves are also paid exorbitant amounts of money. In this video, we're discussing just that, which athletes have been paid the most. So let's get into the highest paid athletes according to Forbes since 1990.
Yes, he has paid an awful lot of money.
Starting off in the era of boxing and Formula 1, with the one who's known as the baddest man on the planet, Mike Tyson himself.
My defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart. I want to eat his children.
Boxing has always been one of the sports with the highest payouts for athletes, especially considering that only two athletes are fighting each other at a time. But Mike Tyson wasn't just any boxer. He also wasn't just any heavyweight champion. He was the most chaotic heavyweight champion boxing had seen at the time. He would trash talk constantly, all of his interviews would end in escalations. He had a general bad boy image to himself, but most importantly, he was an incredible boxer. Sports media absolutely adored Mike Tyson, because with him, getting an outlandish story that would attract eyes was as easy as a walk in the park. But more than that, Mike Tyson wasn't only famous inside the boxing world. Due to his collaboration with Nintendo on creating a game called Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, he already became a household name in most American homes. In 1990, he would lose his first ever boxing match to Buster Douglas in Tokyo. This was a huge upset, so huge in fact that even mainstream media started reporting about it. And while a loss is usually a bad thing, for Mike Tyson it only served to put more people's eyes onto him, and with his crazy eccentric personality, he was certain to keep them hooked. In his prime, no one sold even remotely as many pay-per-view tickets as him. And while he did do some brand deals with Pepsi and Kodak for example, these are speculated to only constitute about 10 to 20% of his yearly income. On the other hand, the purse or the money he would get for all of the fights he had were usually around $20 to $30 million each. Meaning that with just 1 or 2 fights a year, he actually became the best paid athlete at the time. In 1991, Evander Holyfield overtook Mike Tyson in earnings. This was after winning world champion titles in 2 different weight classes, thereby effectively overtaking Mike Tyson as the best boxer of his time. But what no one knew at the time was that just 5 years later, Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield would create the most iconic sports moment of the decade. But before we talk about that, let's discuss Michael Jordan and how he completely changed the world of brand endorsements in sports.
And this is my main man, Michael Jordan. And this is a pair of tight Air Jordans from Nike.
Michael Jordan is arguably the GOAT of basketball. But he's also the only basketballer to ever be the best paid athlete in the world. That's just not something you can achieve through sheer athleticism itself. Michael Jordan, in his prime, wasn't just the best at his sport. He was absolutely dominating everyone else. This is why his NBA salary alone was more than $10 million higher than the next best player. On top of that, he had a very clean-cut image. Unlike Tyson, he was considered a family-friendly, sportsman-like player. This meant he became the perfect fodder for brands to partner with. First, in 1985, Nike struck a lifetime deal with him, creating the Nike Air Jordans, and they took off immediately, as they sold over 100 million in their first year. After the crazy success of the Air Jordans, which only kept increasing, he also started partnering with many other brands. And he really was the perfect family-friendly brand ambassador, because these include McDonald's, Gatorade, Coca-Cola, Heinz, and many more. Through these many appearances and partnerships, he automatically became the face of basketball at the time. And with that recognition, the brand deals just kept coming. At some point, Michael Jordan himself became the brand. I mean, he even appeared in Space Jam and sold more basketball jerseys and accessories than any of his contemporaries. His brand deals and endorsements and his royalty cut from his Nike deal made him much richer than most stars at the time. He was easily making more than 5 times what your average A-list celebrity was doing, but most importantly, through his partnerships outside of basketball, he himself became the first real celebrity athlete, thereby effectively changing the game completely. Today, many people debate whether he was the greatest basketball player of all times, but one thing that is most certainly not for debate is that Michael Jordan was the GOAT of sponsorship deals. Alright, back to Tyson, because in 1995 he got out of jail and did an incredible comeback in boxing.
Well, I mean, Malcolm X told me once, being in prison was one of the best things that ever happened to him.
Well, I don't believe that. I could have handled it another way.
What many people don't know today is that Mike Tyson was convicted for rape and went to jail for 3 whole years until he was released in 1995 on parole. But considering that he already had a bad boy appeal, and he was generally seen as a villain in his league, the jail sentence only helped boost his popularity. By 1996, he was back on top as the richest athlete at the time, and then in 1997, he would face off against his biggest rival for the heavyweight championship. I'm of course talking about none other than Evander Holyfield. Just the fight alone was already a huge event at the time, especially considering how popular boxing was back then. But a single illegal move from Mike Tyson made it into one of the most impactful sports moments of the decade, and potentially even all time. I'm of course talking about the infamous ear bite.
And look at this, he just reaches in and bites him.
Mike Tyson didn't just bite his opponent, he bit an entire piece of his ear off. Obviously, in a sport like boxing, where only hits with your fist are allowed, this was a very illegal move. And while it disqualified Tyson and lost him the title match, he still ended up making over $30 million from that match alone. And of course, that also meant that his name would be all over the news again. And as he had already experienced before, this meant that he would start selling a lot more pay-per-view tickets, meaning that he would make himself a crap load of money. Sure, Mike Tyson is often seen as someone who might not be the smartest in the world, but when it came to selling tickets to see his matches, there has never been anyone else who has even gotten close to his genius. Mike Tyson elevated the popularity of boxing so much that from 1990 to the year 2000, the sport that has been most represented on this list has been boxing. The second most represented sport, and one that will most likely remain one of the best paying sports of all time, was Formula 1. And in 1999, Michael Schumacher, the undisputed best Formula 1 driver of his time, took the #1 spot on this list. Fun fact, that also means that from 1990 to 1999, every top athlete on this list was black. Alright, let's talk about the man to break that streak.
It's simply outstanding and no words for it to explain it any better.
I know that most of our viewers are between the ages of 25 and 40, so most of you probably already know how crazy Ferrari's image was in the early 2000s. While today you talk about getting a Lambo when you're rich, back then it was all Ferrari. Ferrari was considered the best, fastest, and most importantly coolest brand of cars at the time. And without Schumacher, all of this would have never happened. You see, back in the 90s, Ferrari was facing a lot of internal problems. They were mostly just popular in Italy, and even there they were somewhat known for having poor quality assurance. So they hired and fired some people internally and decided to change their image completely. In 1996, they hired Schumacher, the best driver that money could get you at the time, as he just won 2 consecutive World Cups for a different brand. Then they got to engineering the best car they could possibly make, and they allowed Schumacher to hire his own team for his races. After a few years of acclimatizing to the team and the brand improving their Formula 1 cars, it became time for Schumacher to alter the future of Ferrari. It all started in the year 2000, as Ferrari won their first world championship since 1979. And as if that wasn't enough, Schumacher became a true beast on the tracks. So much so that he ended up winning 5 consecutive world championships. This leaves his total world championship wins at 7. Not only was that by far the highest number at the time, to this day only Lewis Hamilton actually ties with him. For those of you who know a little bit about Formula 1 today, Max Verstappen, the current best driver who seems to be winning every major championship, has only won 4 world championships so far. Schumacher's success effectively completely changed the brand image of Ferrari. They were now seen as the fastest, the highest quality, and the coolest brand of all. In the early 2000s, it really became impossible to walk around anywhere in the world and not see people wearing Ferrari merchandise. From hats to shirts to wallets to anything else really. Ferrari merchandise was so big it could almost compete with popular clothing brands. And this is not even talking about their cars, which obviously also started selling like hotcakes among the rich people. Ferrari's enormous success and the many championship wins made it so that Schumacher would have more than double the yearly income of Michael Jordan. While Schumacher was busy winning titles and elevating Ferrari's image, a different athlete was busy elevating the image of an entire sport. I'm talking about Tiger Woods and golf. Before Tiger Woods, golf was considered a sport purely for old rich people who were trying to get drunk in a grassy field while hitting some balls. Obviously, that wasn't exactly true at a professional level, but pretending that that wasn't most cases at the time is just straight up lying. Of course, golf being a sport for rich people means it makes sense that it would land on this list. But before Tiger Woods, only 2 golfers ever appeared on here. And even then, they couldn't even dream of touching the top. Those 2 golfers were Phil Mickelson and Jack Nicklaus. Woods didn't really fit the stereotype of what a golfer was seen as at the time. He was a half Asian and half black young man in his 20s who from the very get-go of his professional career showed incredible potential. Just like Michael Jordan before him, he was also considered a very clean-cut person who is family-friendly and could bring a new wave of people to the sport. Because of this, Nike and Titleist signed with him before he even had his first major win. Now this might not sound too impressive because usually people take quite a while to get their first major win, but with Tiger Woods it took him less than a year. And not only was he the fastest person ever to go from starting his career to winning Masters in 1997, he also was the youngest person ever to win that tournament, the first black person ever to win that tournament, and he set the world record for the highest lead at the Masters tournament ever. He had a whole 12-shot lead over the second place. Still, he wasn't necessarily considered the best in the world quite yet. But that didn't really matter because he went the same road that Michael Jordan did. He built a brand empire. Having someone that young and that different from the stereotypical golfer be one of the best at the game also meant that as news spread, more people would actually tune in and start building an interest in golf. And as Woods continued winning event after event, you could very clearly start to see a trend of more young people trying out golf for themselves. As the broadcast ratings shot up and his first contracts were about to end, Tiger Woods re-signed with a lot of brands for astronomical amounts of money. By 2002, he became the best paid athlete in the world. And he would make sure to remain there for a long time. In the year 2000, he signed with Nike again for a whole $100 million deal. Like they did with Michael Jordan, in this deal they ended up creating a golf division for Nike. Unlike Michael Jordan though, he would only receive endorsement money and no royalties on sales. Still, by the end of his deal in 2024, Tiger Woods ended up making more than $500 million from Nike alone. Of course, he didn't only sign a deal with Nike. He also collaborated with Gatorade, with Rolex, with Bic, with Gillette, and even has his own EA Sports game series. By 2005, he started his streak as the #1 golfer in the world. This streak lasted a whole 5 years, being the longest streak anyone has ever had on that position. Tiger Woods easily made more than $100 million from just his wins alone, but compared to his brand deals and endorsements, this was pocket change. And by 2007, he became the first athlete to earn over $100 million in a single year. Overall, from his royalties and shares in Nike, Michael Jordan ended up making a lot more money than Tiger Woods. Michael Jordan also became the first billionaire athlete. But investment assets and exact royalties are kind of hard to track on a chart like this. So if it comes to only yearly income, Tiger Woods was not just the best earning athlete of his time, he was also the best earning athlete of a whole decade, earning more than even boxing, prize fighters and Formula One drivers. By 2022, Woods became the second billionaire athlete, right after Michael Jordan. Alright, while Woods continues to hog the top spot, let's talk about the first footballer or soccer player to ever land on this list, a trend that we will see a lot more often in the future. I'm talking about none other than the celebrity, model, actor, but most importantly footballer, David Beckham.
The newest member of the LA Galaxy, Mr. David Beckham.
David Beckham is a very special case on this list, because while he was a good footballer, he was by no means the very best. He didn't revolutionize his sport or become the face of it. He wasn't even the best in his own team. Don't get me wrong, he was still a world-class player. He just wasn't quite comparable to the other people on this list. No, the way he made his money wasn't just through good sportsmanship, it was through his image as a celebrity. You see, while he was a football player, he was also known for his stylish appearances, his ever-changing haircuts, but most importantly, he was from the country of gossip. He was from the UK. In the UK, celebrity gossip is everything, most especially with a female audience, and David Beckham, a man who was great at his sport, known for his fashion sense, and just overall incredibly good looking, was the perfect candidate to become the next big celebrity. Of course, the fact that he was married to Posh Spice, one of the Spice Girls, made it so much easier. Most of his earnings were really from things that you would usually expect celebrities to do, like underwear modeling, fashion brands, fragrances, appearing in ads and movies, and just so much more. And after he got a $250 million deal to move to LA and play for a team over there, his opportunities for working with other celebrities like TV and movie stars just kept growing. To this day, David Beckham is known as a celebrity, and while many of us have heard the name before, some might not even know that he used to be a football player. Alright, enough about Beckham. Let's talk about the man who dethroned the king of golf himself. We're talking about a boxing legend, Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather in 2012 didn't just overtake Tiger Woods as the best paid athlete. No, he did it without even having a single dollar from endorsements. Almost every other athlete on this list only landed here because they get a huge amount of money from their brand deals and endorsements, but Floyd Mayweather was different. He managed to earn a whopping $85 million in 2012 from only 2 fights that he was in. And exactly how he did it is the interesting part. But before that, let's quickly touch on the money generated by different sports. In most sports, athletes are paid a yearly wage according to contracts that they sign. The sport with the highest average yearly wages is Formula One, but considering that there are only about 20 professional Formula One drivers and the numbers vary greatly depending on their skill level, it's a really weird statistic to just throw out. Technically, on average, a Formula One driver makes about $14.5 million a year. But let's look at some other sports with more athletes competing in them. By looking at some of the biggest professional leagues in the world, it seems like NBA players are the best paid on average as they earn about $11 million a year. After the NBA, you have other leagues such as the NFL and MLB, and even the NHL makes the list. All of these are leagues that have a limited number of teams competing, making it so that the average salaries are obviously higher than more open sports. But as you can see on our list, the best paid athletes are not necessarily the ones partaking in these sports. With some sports, most athletes don't actually make their money from yearly contracts, but rather from tournament winnings. This is the case with sports like boxing and golf. Of course, Tiger Woods made most of his money from his endorsements and brand deals, but if he had done what Floyd Mayweather did, it might have gone very differently. You see, athletes that do those sports where the income is not guaranteed usually also sign to different management and promotional agencies. These in turn give them a yearly income that is stable and help them promote their matches so that they can earn even more potentially. In return, they take a large cut of the athlete's winnings. And not only that, if they don't feel like promoting an athlete anymore, that guy's career is basically over. Floyd Mayweather was one of the first athletes to realize how much money he was actually missing out on. He was also bold enough to take the risk of starting his own promotional agency that he would sign himself to. And for Mayweather, this seemed to be a pure stroke of genius because it paid off massively. You see, when he was still signed to Top Rank, he was only making about $8 million from a prize fight that other major fighters were making a lot more money from. Not only that, he also felt like they didn't promote his fights enough. But after creating his own agency, he was able to negotiate deals for himself, take the majority cut from any of his matches, and put as much funding into the marketing as he felt like. It did cost him $750,000 in 2006 when he wasn't as big of a name as he is now. But hey, look at how that worked out for him. Founding his own agency meant that he immediately got a huge pay rise, since he cut off the middleman that took a large percentage of his money. And with his great marketing, he managed to get the pay-per-view interest for boxing matches almost as high as it used to be during Mike Tyson's prime. By 2012, 2 fights were enough to beat any other athlete on this list. His fight against Cotto specifically made a staggering $95 million in revenue. Of course, he was also an incredible fighter, as he ended up retiring in 2017 after winning 50 consecutive matches. And all of that without a single loss in his professional career. What an absolute beast. As he's retired from professional boxing today, he still participates in some exhibition matches, but with these you can never really be sure how seriously the fighters are taking them. After his retirement in 2017, the very top of this list was now occupied by 2 of the best football/soccer players in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi.
We shared this stage 15 years, me and him. I don't know if it's ever happened in football. The same 2 guys in the same stage all the time.
Football or soccer has always been the biggest sport in the world. But until roughly 2017, you never really heard anyone speak about football in countries where it's not the national sport. Sure, occasionally there would be some David Beckham gossip happening, but that was barely ever related to his football career. But as the world's economy kept improving, it seemed like a no-brainer to start investing into the sport that most of the world loves. Because as people were getting richer, they also started having more money to spend, making it more attractive to advertise abroad as well. In 2017, FC Barcelona was considered the best football club in the world. With that also came a lot of sponsor money that the team could spend frivolously. And in order to keep their spot as the best, they needed to make sure that Lionel Messi would still be on their team. To keep him around, they offered him the highest salary that was ever seen on a football player's contract. Or at least at the time it was. Quick editor's note, the reported value was only leaked about 4 years after the signing of the contract, which is why it's not reflected on the Forbes numbers which we used to make this chart race. The reported value of this contract was around $550 million over 4 years. This effectively made him the best paid athlete of the year. But he wasn't the only top football player to get on top. The number 2 in the world at the time, Cristiano Ronaldo, was also getting signed. But for him, the money didn't come from signing on to a team. Instead, it came from signing a lifetime contract with Nike that was worth around $1 billion total. Ronaldo's salary at Real Madrid wasn't really public knowledge, so it's estimated to have been around €50 million a year without the bonuses. That being said, considering how much Messi was making at the time, those numbers could in reality be a lot higher. According to Forbes estimates, Cristiano Ronaldo made a whole $93 million in 2017. These footballers would go on to make a lot more money in the near future. But first, let's talk about Floyd Mayweather one more time. While Floyd retired in 2017, he did have one of the biggest exhibition matches of all time later that year. That was his match against Conor McGregor, an infamous UFC fighter who for the first time in his life would step into a boxing ring. While this fight happened in 2017, for some reason Forbes is counting these earnings as made in 2018. And off of that single fight, how much money do you think he made? It was $275 million. This was the event that created the highest revenue for a single athlete in the history of sports. The other $10 million that Mayweather made that year are mostly attributed to brand deals. Considering that I've just mentioned him, let's talk about Conor McGregor and how he became the best paid athlete in 2021.
First simultaneous two-division UFC champion.
Conor McGregor is another interesting case for why he was the best paid athlete of his year. This is because his purses were big but not big enough to be the best. His endorsements brought in money but not enough to be the highest paid. But what did make him a lot of money that year was that he sold his whiskey brand. While we can only have estimates of how much money he actually ended up pocketing from this sale, Forbes estimates that it was around $150 million. Additionally, that year his purses were around $22 million and the rest of the money was made through endorsements. Yeah, there really isn't much more to say, he just sold his business. Alright, let's get back to football with Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi.
The best number 10 in the world, Lionel Messi!
The pandemic was a really tough time for the sports industry. Due to the quarantine, they couldn't really sell out arenas anymore. Matches were often played without any audience present. Entire events like the Olympics were postponed. And overall, many teams were just bleeding money. For athletes like Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, this wasn't a problem though. Because of the fewer matches that were being played, they could focus more on building out their brands online. Additionally, they still had their older contracts that didn't expire yet. As Messi's contract with Barcelona was slowly coming to an end and they couldn't afford to hire him again, he decided to sign a less committal 2-year deal with the Paris-based PSG. At the same time, he was increasingly doing more partnership with various different brands. Ronaldo's contract, on the other hand, wasn't expiring until 2022. In other words, until 2023, he was basically doing the same thing that Messi was doing. But then, as 2023 came, he signed a deal with Al Nassr, a team based in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is known for using their oil money to try to innovate and expand in different fields. They're aware that they can't solely rely on fossil fuels for their survival, and so innovation is the route that they go with. While many of their projects unfortunately don't quite succeed, they do keep trying to explore new areas. An area that they've recently started investing a lot of money in is sports and esports. With the hopes of getting their nation's best football team some international recognition by winning high-profile matches, they scouted Ronaldo for one of the highest wages ever seen in football. This deal is reportedly worth $215 million a year. Additionally, he's also been growing his social media presence a lot. Today he is the most followed Instagram account in the world. But it's not just that, he also started a YouTube channel and became the fastest YouTuber to reach over 50 million subscribers, going from 0 to 50 million in just 6 days. Ronaldo is constantly working on his branding and trying to really build out a powerhouse of a brand. I don't think we've ever seen any other sportsman get quite as extensive as him when it comes to his online presence. If he continues this like he's doing right now, I suspect that he will eventually have a streak at the top of this list longer than that of Tiger Woods. But well, we can't know for sure. All we can do now is wait and see.
Come on, man! That's too easy!
No. I mean, it's always if right. If my mom had balls, she would be my dad. So, yeah.
What a chart race. The sports industry really has changed a lot in the last 35 years. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to touch on every athlete on this list, but every single one of them has an interesting story to them. I mean, I didn't even get to touch on the person with the coolest nickname of all, the Iceman. If you want to see a longer video where I can touch on more athletes than this one, please let me know in the comments, and if this video gets over 100,000 views, I'll be sure to make one. And trust me, I mean it, because researching this was a blast. Alright, until then, let me know who you think is gonna overtake Cristiano Ronaldo in the comments below, and see you next time.